before the US feels the inflation, other countries feel it first and then they feel it. Then I wonder if they'll dollarize or go to something else, whether it's Bitcoin or to the Chinese yuan or something else. That is very interesting for me. I think there is room for Bitcoin to sort of find at least a niche, if not something greater in all of those places. And this is where sort of like that next stage of fiat collapse is very interesting, because we're kind of seeing people adopt Bitcoin because they have to and not because they want to.
Welcome to Bitcoin Basics with your hosts Faris and Gordon. Visit bitcoinbasics.help if you need help buying and securing your Bitcoin. We have a brand new podcast. Visit myprivacy.help to subscribe. Did you know you can completely control your personal information without relying on a third party? Faris, Gordon, and industry experts explain how you can reclaim control of your data, your privacy, your life. Visit myprivacy.help.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Bitcoin Basics podcast with your hosts, Faris and Gordon. We are the 14th of June, 2023. The price of Bitcoin is $25,800. The block height is $794,21. Let me try that again, guys. The block height is 794,251. All right, Gordon, maybe I should stop here and let you just talk for half a minute.
I think the funny thing is, Faris, when we first started doing podcasts, I was editing everything. I was cutting stuff. Now I'm like, no, leave it in. We just interviewed Jimmy Song, and man, this is the third time I've had Jimmy on, and he's amazing. I love Jimmy. He's just, apart from being highly knowledgeable and highly technical and knows what he's talking about, he's able to explain extremely complicated concepts and fundamentals quite clearly for us sort of non-developer types. And so, yeah, we had a fascinating interview with Jimmy. We talked about Bitcoin NFTs. We talked about Nostr, which is the new social media platform built sort of on top of Bitcoin, and everything in between. So, yeah, it was fascinating. I mean, I could talk to Jimmy for 3 hours asking questions, and yeah, he's such a breadth of knowledge. And apart from being an amazingly nice bloke, he's super interesting as well, Faris.
Oh, he is. He's incredibly generous with his time as well. So, I mean, whenever we reach out to Jimmy, he's like, yep, come on. He'll come on the show. And yeah, very generous and just wonderful spirits. And he talks about he's just been traveling the world for the last 9 months with his family, and his insight into, culture and Bitcoin. And yeah, we could have kept going with this conversation. It's always a treat.
Yeah, so it's a good sort of update if you sort of think about Bitcoin and what's happening and you're not sort of sure. It's a good sort of review of there is a lot happening with Bitcoin. Bitcoin gets criticized quite a lot for being boring and slow, and there's nothing happening. All the innovation is happening on these altcoins. That's not true. Absolutely not true. So yeah, have a listen to this and you'll be excited, whether you have Bitcoin or not, about what is happening in Bitcoin.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, like, and share so we can find others like yourself.
Well, we really appreciate you joining us, Jimmy. We know how pressed for time you are, and it's great that you've been following your journey around the world. It's been amazing. There's been a lot going on in Bitcoin, and two things we want to talk to you about today are Nostr and ordinals. These are a couple of things where we are the Bitcoin Basics podcast. There's a lot of stuff we tend to avoid. But, Nostr, for one, seems to be picking up a lot of momentum within Bitcoin circles. Tell us a little bit, just for the person who's never heard of Nostr, why is it and should they be taking it seriously?
Yeah, so Nostr is basically a decentralized Twitter, or more accurately, sort of a decentralized protocol that you can build pretty much anything on. And the first sort of set of applications seems to be mostly Twitter-like. So you can publish stuff to the Nostr network, and various relays pick it up, and you can go subscribe to certain people's Nostrs. The main feature is that it's decentralized. So the way Twitter and Facebook and all of these platforms work is that when you write a tweet or write a status update or add a picture to Instagram or something like that, they all get uploaded to a server. And then when your friends subscribe to you, the database at the server keeps track of it. And when you request updates, they push it to you. Nostr doesn't work like that. It works through relays. So you push your updates to the relays and people pull updates from relays. So if the relay doesn't like you or doesn't want to store data or something like that, then they don't have to. But there's not just one. There's many, many. In fact, you can just go run your own if you want. And many people do. And this gives you kind of much more control over your own data. So instead of relying on Twitter or Facebook's goodwill to not censor you, you just keep things and publish to whomever you want. Now, if you piss off a lot of relays, at some point they might just not store your data. So if you're a perpetual spammer, for example, they have no obligation to do that. But if you want to be the spammer and try to push it out to whoever, you can. But you're not likely to get many followers and so on. It essentially is sort of like a platform that is very much like in the spirit of the original internet. It's by nature decentralized, and you can push data and publish things on your own without even need for much more than a private key, and that's the beauty of it.
Sorry, Jimmy, just one thing for the non-tech people in the room. What's a relay?
Yeah, so a relay is basically a place where data comes in and data goes out. And you can think of a server as a similar thing. Data comes in, like when you write a tweet and you press enter, that data goes to Twitter servers, and then from there, it gets pushed out to all the users. So a relay is sort of like a mini version of that, but anyone can run it. It doesn't have to go through Twitter. When you write a tweet, it has to go through Twitter, or it never gets into your profile or pushed to your users. A similar thing with Facebook, Instagram, and many of these other social platforms. You have to go communicate with their server in order to do it. But with a relay, you publish to many different relays, and they can do whatever they want with it. And some relays may have like storage limitations or anti-spam measures or whatever. So they might not publish your stuff to their users or to other people that are listening to that relay. But that's basically what it is, and it's called the relay because between you and someone that subscribed to you, it's sort of like the relay of that data. It goes from you to the relay to them, but it can be essentially anybody, and it's an open protocol. So, if you want to subscribe to a relay, there's code you can write fairly reasonably now with ChatGPT, and if you want to write a server or a relay, you can do that too. It's very open as opposed to something like Twitter or Facebook, which thrives on being sort of the middleman and injecting ads in between the time that they suck in your data and give it to somebody else.
So with Twitter, if I want to post a tweet, obviously you have to go through Twitter servers. There's no options. With Nostr, I go through a relay. If I'm not happy with that, I can just jump onto a different one. Is there a concern for privacy? Am I posting my IP address, anything like that, to a relay? Should that be something I'm worried about, that whoever's running a relay can see who I am and see what I'm posting, where I'm coming from?
I guess so. I mean, if you're concerned about that, you can certainly use a relay over Tor or I2P or some other privacy preserving sort of thing. The main thing, though, is that there's a private key that you control, and you sign all your messages with that. And if it doesn't validate, they don't push it out because they can't prove that it's from you. So they can't sort of like falsely pretend to be you. Unlike Twitter, which can, I'm not saying that they have, but it's definitely possible that an employee could get into their database and update it and make it sound like George Soros said something weird or something like that. So there's sort of like a security closer to the user, because you protect your own private key, whereas with something like Twitter, it's all based on your password and maybe your two-factor authentication. But ultimately it's them, it's the data in their database that determines what is quote unquote true in that platform. So it's different. And just to give you an idea, most people, if you're running a Nostr client, you're connected to about 10 relays. But there are literally hundreds, and I imagine future Nostr clients will connect to, sort of like a random assortment. They're talking about some sort of a gossip protocol for node discovery and things like that. So you can discover other relays and sort of automatically connect to those, and you can also keep like a record of your own data. So someday you might not like Nostr and some other decentralized protocol pops up. You can parse that data and go publish it somewhere else, and it's still all yours. You don't have to rely on Twitter's goodwill to download all your data or your content or whatever. For a long time, this was a major reason why people wouldn't get off of Facebook, because they provided free photo hosting. So it's those sort of things kind of matter, and having sovereignty over your own data is kind of the point of Nostr.
For comparison, Jimmy, how is it different to say Mastodon?
Mastodon. So Mastodon is like a single server, and I guess they have like peering and things like that. First of all, it's not really at a protocol level. It's more at a software level for Mastodon. So you run the Mastodon software, you set it up, set up the server, and so on, and everyone has to run essentially the same software. With something like Nostr, you can write your own, and in fact, I started writing one just because I was curious how it worked and I wanted to play with ChatGPT. So I asked ChatGPT, hey, look up the Nostr API and, show me how to write like, something according to NIP01. And it actually gave me code that kind of sort of worked. And I had to tweak it and test it and make it actually work. But this is the new world of programming now. You can like, see how something works and program against it while not doing all of the grunt work of like trying to figure out why this stupid API key won't work, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of different Mastodon instances and things like that. I would say that Nostr is at a lower level. It also has Lightning integration, which, as far as I know, Mastodon doesn't. So you can zap people. So if you appreciate something that they said, you can just sort of tip them natively in Lightning. You have to have something set up on your side as a recipient. So there's essentially an LN URL at the back end that they query, and it pops them an invoice and they pay the invoice, and all of that occurs in the background if you have a Nostr client that is connected to a Lightning wallet. But it's pretty cool. I've published a bunch of stuff to Nostr. I've gotten, I don't know, I want to say around 700,000 or 800,000 sats and tips, just like from random posting, whatever. And I think people do that, right? Like it's they appreciate it. I think one of the about half of that came from like Jack Dorsey on one tweet or something, but that sort of thing happens, and it's an interesting ecosystem. Who knows how sustainable it is as far as like being a stream of income, But the key is that it's permissionless, it's decentralized, it's not controlled by anybody. So there's a lot of innovation going on it, and you're seeing new clients try different stuff every week. So that's the key thing that differentiates it from everything else.
So sorry, go on.
I was just going to say it's fantastic because a lot of people, they don't like Facebook and they don't like Twitter, and they're going somewhere else. They're going to Mastodon, or they're doing a Stack Overflow. I think you still do, maybe Stack Overflow. I'm not sure, but you're sort of playing whack-a-mole. Like you move to a new platform. Yeah, this platform's privacy protected, but then in 6 months' time they sell your data, or they get bought by someone else, and you're just constantly moving. So this is awesome. Some sort of decentralized social network. One question I had, and maybe it's too technical, but why and how would you want to set up your own relay for Nostr?
You would have to find the relay software that you like, or write your own. It's pretty straightforward with the protocol. It's all published as NIPS, which is slightly racist, but also kind of funny. But there are Nostr improvement proposals, and you just go implement whichever ones as a server, and optimize accordingly if you want to program it. But there's a bunch of relay software that you can play with and see what you like. But yeah, I mean the key is that you do have the ability to create your own, just like the users have the ability to kind of move their data. The thing that's frustrating about Facebook or Twitter or any of these platforms is that it's not easy to transfer your data over to some other platform. If you don't like Facebook, you can't easily take all of that data, and especially your network, and plop it on over somewhere else. This is what actually keeps this is the moat around social networking, and why a lot of people are reluctant to leave Facebook, is because that network is there and the rest of the network can't move. And this is the advantage that I think Nostr has over the long term, is that you keep your network. The network is yours. The data is yours. All of it is yours. All of those connections, they're all downloadable. You just have them. And if you don't like the client you're using, just go try something else. There's like hundreds of them. And if you don't like the policy of a relay, go choose someone else. It's all based on sort of like user choice and what you want to do. And a lot of people use Damus right now. That's the iPhone client for Nostr, and that, by the way, comes from Nostradamus, right? Like Nostradamus, that's where that name comes from. But that that's one of the most popular ones, and they just got banned by the Apple Store like earlier today. So they're talking about putting it back and stuff, but it's entirely possible for all of those people to just move to another client, and it's like nothing happened. It didn't matter that it got banned. And we know that there were a bunch of apps that were banned that were supposedly social networks and stuff. But the power of this thing is that you don't need Apple's permission. If you can have a browser, you can run it. You can sideload it on an Android phone. You can create your own client from scratch, whatever you want to do, and that's the key.
And that's what you just said is super important, because you've got an open protocol, and it would be like if you enjoyed the Facebook interface, but you hate Facebook. Well, it doesn't matter. You move to a Twitter interface, or you move to a Mastodon interface, or you just keep on moving around, find something you like, but you don't have to move your data. Like your data is there, you own it,
and more important,
and as you said, write your
there.
own client. Yeah, true. Yeah. Okay.
So what's the incentive for someone to run a relay? How are they gaining from this? Is there a financial incentive, economic one? How does it work?
And we're still working this out. There were a bunch of relays at the very beginning that were just sort of running for free. They got overloaded, and then they started charging like one-time Lightning fees to be on their relay. And then once you paid the invoice, you can sort of connect with them forever. I think eventually they... they're not going to run themselves. They're probably going to need some sort of business model. And I think the most direct one is probably the most reasonable, which is you pay for them to sort of give you the data that you want. And that costs bandwidth and so on. And you can price it in Lightning. So it's however many sats to go suck in this much data or whatever. But they're trying to figure out ways to monetize it. And this is where, if you have good ideas on reasonable ways to run a relay, this is where you can probably make a lot of money. Now, like there are enough people with, I think, spare CPU and hard drive capacity that you could kind of run it almost like a SETI at home. You remember those? Like you're looking for like alien signals of radio waves or whatever on the idle CPU time. I imagine you could do something like that with a Nostr relay, where on your off time you can sort of like act as a relay or something like that. No, that's just an idea, but there are many ways in which this problem can get solved. It doesn't necessarily have to be a super profitable business or anything. It could be a hobbyist thing. It could be something that you do for your network. It could be something that you do just because you want to make sure that the network has relay that other people can trust. And there are many reasons people run these things, and it'll be as varied in motivation as that.
Thanks, Jimmy. And for the noobs, as someone who they're hearing about Nostr for the first time, want to give it a go, because there's quite a few different downloads, applications available. Mm-hmm. Where should they start? Well,
the absolute easiest thing to do is go to snort.social, and that's a web-based Nostr client, and go to snort.social, generate a private key, keep that private key safe somewhere, and then publish your public key to other people and let them know who you are. Follow some people using their interface, or go look at the global feed and see who interests you, and start following some people and try it out. And if you're brave, go and hook in your Lightning wallet to Snort and tip people for things that you like and so on. But that would be one way to get into it fairly easily. If you have an iPhone or Android, there are apps that are a little more refined and polished that might be. That might give you a better experience. Just make sure that whatever safe private key you have, you insert into the same thing and you see the exact same stuff. So, you can have a different client on your phone than on the web, on your desktop or whatever, as long as the private key is the only thing that matters, because that's what identifies you, and that's what you put into the app, and you get private DMs through the public key associated with that private key and so on. So, that's how you would use it. And like I said, it's a protocol. So there's a whole bunch of things that are possible on top of it. People have already, used it for a lot of DMs and stuff. There are Bitcoin proposals for, signing PSBTs over Nostr DM and so on, because, the communication aspect can be a little bit tricky, and there's no, there's no network level thing to do that with Bitcoin. So this is a really useful kind of way to communicate, to do a lot of stuff. It's honestly the possibilities are so many, and this is what gets a lot of programmers like me excited, because wow, we have something decentralized, and you can do this, and this. They're talking about kind of getting rid of DNS almost. You could when's the last time you were able to publish a blog post without having a domain name? You could do that on Nostr, right? There's no domain name. You just publish it, and people can verify that you did it, and tip you for it even. It's crazy. You could be completely anonymous, make a ton of money just posting stuff to Nostr, or I guess if you're an AI image generation engine and you're some hacker in Russia, you can get paid for that by running some sort of Nostr bot that does that as a service whenever they get tipped 5,000 sats or something, right? There's so many cool sort of interesting business models, because there's no friction from a monetary perspective. You can get paid for almost anything, and there's like you don't need to set up anything else. Like you don't need a name, a domain name or anything. You just have a public key. You publish that, and that's it. It's incredible, actually. It's kind of the way that the internet was originally designed, which never really quite fulfilled those expectations of.
Is there a concern that it can be used for nefarious purposes then?
Oh, of course. And I'm sure that will be the FUD around it is, spies are using this to communicate or whatever. And there's no backdoor to it. And I imagine this is the thing that will probably get it on the government's radar. Drug cartels are using this, or child pornographers are using this, or something like that. But here's the thing: the people that shut things down, like they're the ones to worry about more so than the evil people that might be using it as a tool. It's an amazing tool, which is why a lot of people use it. But this is why it's so powerful, because there's no central authority that's able to shut it down or control it. And we know, for example, that a lot of Twitter DMs and your Gmail and your Facebook private messages and stuff like that FBI can go in and read any of that at any time if they have a warrant. Whereas your Nostr DMs, they ain't reading that without your private key. So that's some powerful stuff. A lot of these like apps sort of say that they have end-to-end encryption. Remains to be seen how end-to-end they are, because it's hard to prove something like that. And we don't really know. They like to say that they do to sort of make you think that. This one, because it's a private key, you have it, no one else does. And you can be even more paranoid and like keep the private key somewhere else. And I imagine there will be products eventually, and maybe it'll be sort of integrated into hardware wallets, where the signing of the message happens on the hardware wallet, and but you compose it on your computer or whatever, but the signing happens on a separate device so that it's kept even more secure. Like no one's going to snoop on your stuff.
Well, that's the beauty of open source, isn't it? That's why I don't use closed source software for very important stuff. And if you're doing something dodgy, you're probably hanging out in a private Telegram group rather than Nostr. So anyway, so many possibilities. And it's sort of like Bitcoin. You've got an open protocol. And if you're a developer or someone slightly technical, you don't like a Bitcoin wallet, go create your own wallet. Like that's the beauty of it. You can just participate. Now, we could talk about this forever, but Jimmy, I want to pick your brain like about a million things. And another thing that we've been talking about lately is Bitcoin Lightning, of course. BRC20 ordinals, what's it all about? Is Bitcoin going to die due to network fees? Is Bitcoin NFTs killing the world? What's going on?
Well, so ordinals are sort of like a particular way of counting sats. So a particular sat represents something. And this is a really old idea. In fact, this is how I got into Bitcoin. I worked on something called colored coins back in 2013. And the idea of color coins was you take normal Bitcoin and you give it special meaning by convention by saying, okay, these represent shares of my company. These represent, X, Y, or Z. So that sort of idea has been around since at least 2013, and that was the basis of a lot of what we call altcoins now. Vitalik was actually on that Color Coins project, and
I was going to say,
and he launched Ethereum based on what he thought the direction of Color Coins should go, which was basically being a platform for scams for him. For me, it was, like something like securities or something like that, which now that I look back, it's just kind of, it doesn't make sense to do it on there. But anyway, So ordinals are not very different than that, and NFTs, of course, are sort of non-fungible tokens, and it's basically by convention saying this thing represents something, and then when you transfer it, it represents something else. And at the very beginning, the reason why they were doing that was almost kind of a troll. It was, okay, let's fill up the Bitcoin block space with a giant, JPEG of a wizard or something, and they literally took a JPEG file and put it into the witness field and said, "Ha ha," checkmate maxis or something like that. That was sort of the initial thing, and they sort of decided to continue with it, I guess, because they were, getting a lot of attention for their sort of stupidity, I guess, or their nefariousness, or their their notoriety or something like that. So they kept doing that, and then everyone realized kind of, this is stupid. Why are you putting the entire JPEG there when you can just put a hash of it there? That would be a lot more efficient and space saving. And that this is where like the more like the other standards kind of came in. But all of it is really just sort of additional tokens on top of Bitcoin. And this is something that a lot of affinity scammers like to sort of do a bait and switch on. Oh, I'm pro Bitcoin. See, I'm only for coins that are on top of Bitcoin or something like that. When really they're still sort of issuing their own token and selling it to the public, and essentially defrauding them out of a lot of money. So that's the way I see ordinals. Is it's a way to hype something and get the public's money for it. And this has been proven over many years that people will buy almost anything if they think other people will buy that same thing. And it's almost like a momentum of its own. And ordinals have that as well. So they're trying different kinds of things. I mean, already it's kind of dying down. I think even like 3 or 4 weeks ago, the block space was like very congested, and you had more than like 6.25 Bitcoin in fees in a particular block. That's not the first time that happened, by the way. In 2017, there was a block with more than 12 and a half when the block reward was 12 and a half. So, but, that kind of tells you like, there was sort of like a bubble there. And then, it's come down since then. I think I checked yesterday. I think it was like 15 sats per byte would get you in on the next block, which is really honestly isn't very expensive. It does seem like it's put in kind of a new floor, but this isn't the first time another protocol has tried to use the Bitcoin blockchain for stuff like this. Factom did it in 2014. Veriblock did it in 2017. Counterparty did it all through 2015, 2016. So this isn't an uncommon thing, and people make it sound like it's all new and it's because of Taproot or something like that. It's not. It's the stuff is very old. They're just sort of marketing it a little different and just trying to make Bitcoin maximalists look bad.
So to summarize, you'd be on the side of Adam Back, who says it's a waste of blockchain space, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to altcoins in that it's a complete waste of time. It just takes people a while to realize that, for the market to realize that as well. And like if there's anything in Bitcoin that proves stuff, it's just time. And if it actually is an innovation, talk to me in 5 years, right? Are those ordinals, like doing anything? Is anyone using it for anything useful in the real world? Then we can talk. And this has always been sort of my position with a lot of these altcoiners. They're like super convinced that this is life-changing technology, blah, blah, blah. Like, okay, let's just wait, right? Like 5 years, let's see where you are. Let's see where Bitcoin is, right? If you're actually innovative, you'll go up against Bitcoin in 5 years' time. If you're not, then you'll go down. Okay, what's happened with almost everything? They go down, right? Like that's that's been the case, and it's so incredibly obvious that they don't really have any utility, and that bare Bitcoin would have been the better purchase. So it takes a lot of people time to learn. I suspect that a lot of this is envy. They feel like they got in too late on Bitcoin, so they want to get in on something new and hot, and they'll listen to almost any narrative, however stupid. And this is honestly one of the most stupid, right? Taproot wizards or whatever, and dressing up like whatever, and hating on Maxi somehow. That's supposed to build a community or something like that. It's kind of a ridiculous and stupid kind of thing. But like I said, like time proves this stuff, and we're already seeing that the bubble has burst on ordinals. So we'll see.
Yeah, hating on Maxis. I'm reminded of a story of I can't think of the author's name, but he wrote The Creature from Jekyll Island, talking about the Central Reserve banks and all that. And he said the amount of hate he got from people, and he'd asked these people, what specifically in the book do you disagree with? So he's never been given a single example.
Yeah, it's sort of there's an emotional attachment to sort of hating maximalists or something like that, and they're very disingenuous. I find their arguments about as convincing as like atheist proclamations of the flying spaghetti monster or something like that. It's just very cringy, and I kind of ignore it. For me, that's a lot easier mentally to like deal with and not have to waste so much time like doing that. There are much bigger fish to fry. There are a lot more important things to worry about. I'm in this space to bring people financial freedom, to help them take the burden of the state away from them in terms of their savings. Helping people in Lebanon save their money. Like, really, you're gonna do anything close to that, or anything even positive with wizard JPEGs on witness field in a particular transaction that anyone can prune? Really? Like, it just seems like a complete waste of time and not doing anything good for the world. Which is why I think there are just a bunch of rent seekers.
It's funny. I took a break from Twitter, and so I wasn't aware of ordinal stuff coming up. And then I get a direct message from Brian Harrington, because what do you think of ordinals? And I'd just been on the Thank God for Bitcoin fan, so I was in that whole theological mindset. So I respond, what do I think of ordinals in reference to theological religious ordinals? And it was this very long VN, and I've not heard back from him since.
He's probably very confused.
That's a good tactic.
I mean, maybe that's a very good way to respond to the trolls, I guess.
I think a lot of people got sucked into the hype of this because it was Bitcoin's chance to shine, like Ethereum, and there's all these NFTs, and we feel left out. So now I've finally got it. We finally got NFTs on Bitcoin. I think that's why people got sucked into it.
Yeah, and they don't even know the history, right? Like, we had NFTs on Bitcoin in 2013. There were rare Pepes on Counterparty, which runs on top of Bitcoin in 2015, 2016. There've been stuff like that for a long time. It's not anything new. We had CryptoKitties on Ethereum in 2017, and people think this is new. It's not. It's never been. It's just old stuff recycled and hyped up again by VCs or something. It's not new, but people will fall for whatever narrative because they think it's interesting. I don't know. They want to believe it's true so they could get rich, or they can deal with their own rent seeking or their own conscience. I don't really know, but there's a lot of there was a lot of hype around it. Like I said, it's best just to ignore it and steer people away from it if you can.
That's what we've been trying to do for almost 4 years now, Boris.
Well, we go back to the database. Can I replace your project with a database? If 99.9% of the time I can. So it's like, well, yeah, let's just use the database because it'll be faster and cheaper. But anyway, I remember back in the day, Factom as well, and they were trying to do, I think they were trying to do like PDFs and do all kinds of stuff in the blockchain. And also there was the BitDNS, and I think Satoshi also wasn't a fan of that. He sort of said it would pollute block space, and it's not really what Bitcoin's about. I guess Gordon, if you want
this day and age, I think you need to refer to Satoshi as they.
The pronouns for Satoshi are they and them. No, I don't know.
Okay. Sure. So yeah, anyway, this has been like the millionth project trying to put something into the blockchain to sort of, tie it to the real world. And if you want to do that, maybe a sidechain or something like that. But hey, most likely just use the database. It's cheaper and faster.
And lots of other services do the same thing. Like they've done it for a lot cheaper all over the place. Yeah, it just makes zero sense. And everybody wants something on a blockchain so they can sell a token on it. And it's like the most inefficient and stupid thing ever. But VC is going to VC.
Yeah, exactly, Jimmy. And some Bitcoiners are like, because it's, Bitcoin's amazing or whatever, so let's bring that into Bitcoin. It's like, well, no, most of the time, actually a central authority or a central company, private company, could do that faster, cheaper, because you're trusting them anyway. So it's the whole, why would you want to have Uber on the blockchain thing? We're doing this whole blockchain wars thing again. It's all over again.
Yeah, and that's it's so stupid, and it's almost always pushed by some VC that wants their token to go up or something like that. Now, what's interesting is you can have something like Uber on Nostr, and I think people are trying to make that happen. You would basically have maybe like a relay that sort of hosts this kind of data, and you can know, okay, this person is here, and you can select somebody and pay them. But the data exchange aspect, it makes much more sense on Nostr. Whereas, doing it on a blockchain doesn't really make that much sense, because you have to, everyone's storing all of that data. It doesn't make sense. You should only store data that's like pertinent to you. If you're a driver, you want like all the data pertaining to the rides you've given and not everyone else's rides. Who cares about those? Versus, and if you're a rider, you just want the ones where you've ridden. So it's kind of that sort of thing makes sense on Nostr, because you have this peer-to-peer communication layer that makes it possible, and you would need a third party to sort of filter for those, and multiple relays can do the job to make it more reasonably decentralized. But this is where like a company can come in and come up with some sort of like Nostr Uber replacement, where they have people that need rides on one side. These are the asks, and then the people that are willing to provide rides, the bids, something like that, and then they can negotiate and figure this stuff out and do all of that settlement, with an agreed upon like signing and things like that. Now, you need a lot of software to make it happen, but the protocol is there and it's decentralized, so you can kind of program against it and make it happen. But doing it on a blockchain makes zero sense. And this is where kind of Nostr and Bitcoin intersect in a way, because of all of these projects that sort of made stupid excuses to make their own token. Nostr sort of like runs natively with Lightning, and it doesn't have this blockchain stuff. It makes it so much easier to program something reasonable that the market might use. And because of its open source nature, it has certain advantages over these centralized things. Although the centralized things have their advantages too, particularly in the form of fiat money and investment and things like that.
Okay, so that's a big no for ordinals from Jimmy. What other? I mean, you're obviously super excited about Nostr, and something that we need to get into as well, or as some people call it Nostril, but anyway. What other projects are you excited about or working in? Like, what are you doing development sort of wise?
Well, I've been writing the book for like the last 9 months, so that's been kind of a big one. The main thing that I've been looking at are well, I'm getting I'm starting to dig in a little bit into Lightning, and particularly like with respect to how it interacts with Schnorr signatures and Musig and Frost and things like that. And there's some really exciting possibilities there. There's also this new protocol called ARC, which I think I'm still trying to really kind of wrap my head around. But it's a layer 2 protocol that's compatible with Lightning and has it's sort of like UTXO recycling, or it's they call it like VTXO, virtual transaction outputs, and you can sort of transfer between people fairly easily within them, and it can seriously reduce the on-chain footprint. It's something like a coin pool, but compatible with Lightning, as I understand it. But that's very interesting to me. And what we're seeing lately is that when you combine some of these layer 2s together, you get something really cool and interesting and covering sort of like the weaknesses of these particular layer 2s. So, for example, like during the fee spike, what we saw was people doing opening channels using liquid Bitcoin, right? So you can create a Lightning channel off of liquid, and LBTC trades at par with BTC because you can transfer either direction. So instead of opening a channel on the main chain, you could go over to Liquid, which has very, very low fees, and open a channel there. And if you had somebody routing that had one channel open with LBTC and another channel open with BTC, and they can sort of transfer one for the other, you can essentially open a Lightning channel kind of for free, right? Like the big thing about the weakness of Lightning is that you have to have that on-chain transaction to open a channel to make it useful, and that channel might be expensive when fees are high. But Lightning, Liquid kind of covered for that, and this sort of like synergy, and of course Liquid it doesn't have as big of a network, so by hooking into Lightning, now it has access to a lot more. It has the sort of reach of the Lightning network, so they're both sort of covering for each other by combining these layer 2s. Statechains has sort of like similar properties. That's another layer 2 where you pass UTXOs around, and there's like a proposal for opening a Lightning channel off of the UTXO that doesn't need an on-chain transaction to transfer. So you can have essentially a new channel open without any on-chain footprint, which would be even better than the Liquid thing. So there are all these synergies between L2s that I think are have a lot of potential. ARC being another one, which could definitely like sort of really make the Bitcoin network almost work seamlessly. And it requires a lot of software, a lot of development, a lot of UX testing and things like that. But this is the kind of thing that we have to think about as we get a lot more people using Bitcoin as a method of payment and so on.
And that's really the pain point, is it? You can do all this amazing stuff on this layer 2 and something like Lightning, but at the end of the day, you're opening and closing channels for that initial and second main chain transaction. And as you said, if the fees are high or whatnot, then that's sort of an issue. So I understood about 50% of that. Faris, how many percent did you understand?
49.
That's pretty good. Well done.
The key is that basically the weaknesses of Lightning, as you know it, have some solutions in these other layer 2s. So if that's the case, then let's speed up some of the development on these layer 2s. And there's like so many layer 2s that are coming. I didn't even mention Fedimint and Mutiny's doing some interesting stuff. And there's a whole bunch of different projects that are trying different things. And this is sort of like possibly leading to the next soft fork in Bitcoin, which would be, if ARC really is as useful as we think it is, and if it proves itself out in the market, then it might make sense to do any prev out or opctv or something like that as a soft fork, because then you can enable all of this stuff in like a very seamless way and make it work really, really well, and synergistically with Lightning. Those are all really cool and exciting things. I don't think any of it comes to fruition, in less than 5 years. But those are the things that I've been looking into.
This is what I, coming from a non-tech perspective, truly appreciate about Bitcoin is, they say, what would you prefer, an idea or good people? And you want good people because the wrong people can screw up a good idea. Bitcoin is an amazing idea, and it's attracted the world's greatest, mathematical, scientific minds, and they're not under deadlines. Like, with an IT department, a big corporation, you got the CEO saying, I need this done by the next AGM or quarterly results, and it might not work, but they're not going to listen to you. You have these IT geniuses who are under no, overarching pressure to get stuff done. So this is why it's like, great, these guys are working on this. They're trialing it. Use Litecoin as a test pod. It's fantastic that, this is what I really appreciate about Bitcoin is that these guys are just working on this slowly to make sure that it's safe and secure.
Yeah, and this is in contrast to altcoins. They really do work kind of like the corporate IT departments that you just described. You have to get this feature out on this date, and if we don't hit it, then whatever. And they have roadmaps and things like that, and that's how you can tell. And sometimes they slip on their roadmaps or whatever, which gives them even less credibility. But it's completely centralized because they have a roadmap. Oh, we're going to move to Ethereum 2.0 by this date, and we're going to get rid of it. And how many times has that deadline slipped? I like if that were any sort of like normal software company or a game company or anything where deadlines actually mattered, then the Ethereum should be at 0. But instead, they just sort of use it as an excuse to, I don't know, hype or say something. And it kills me that such bad software engineers get credit for being good software engineers. It's sort of I imagine this is how like Michelangelo would feel if he were to observe modern art and see how ugly it was and say, this is what they consider good artists now.
I think you're being too kind, Jimmy. They're not software engineers, they're web developers.
That's kind of that's an insult to web developers, man.
That's true. Yeah, I'd take that back. Now you mentioned a new book. Last time, by the way, I looked at our last episode, which was 19th of November, 2021, and we'll talk about Taproot and all that kind of good stuff. You mentioned a new book. What are you working on? What have you worked on? Has there been anything since Thank God for Bitcoin?
Yeah, so there was a book after that, Bitcoin and the American Dream, which we published not last year, but the year before. And that's a book for policymakers, politicians, people that are in government. And we wrote it specifically for them because, like I still remember I was on a phone call, like a Zoom call like this with Ted Cruz. And we were trying to convince him that Bitcoin was a good thing and everything else. He said, can you guys just wait a second? There's a bill I have to go vote on. And he ran over, voted on it, came back, and he was like, okay, so there's this new provision that's, broker dealer language that could include minors. And he asked us a question that kind of took me off guard. So he goes, what do you want us to do? What do you want me to do? Like, and I was like, vote against it, like offer an amendment, like what do you want me to do? And I was kind of like shocked at that question, but at the same time, it made all the sense in the world, because if you don't give them direction, right? If you don't tell them what you want, they're not going to be able to help you. So, in a way, we wrote that book as a way to inform them, okay, You might not like Bitcoiners. You might disagree with them vehemently, whatever. But here's what we want, right? Like, and here are the people that you'd be disenfranchising if you went against us. So we made the case for, like the liberal case, the conservative case, the rural case, the city case, the innovation case, and the national defense case, and everything else. But it was, hey, like, on a per capita basis, or on a percentage basis, more Black people own Bitcoin than white people. And that's usually very surprising to a lot of politicians. They're like, wait, what? Why is that? And we go through exactly why. Well, as a US government, you had Jim Crow laws and things like that. You basically took property away from Black people, and you've been doing it for generations. So if you're a Black person and you know about this history, you're going to want something that the government can't take away. So like that's a very powerful argument for Black people. It's like you have a history of the government taking away your property. In fact, you were property, right? Like 150 years ago. So for those people, it makes all the sense in the world to put money into Bitcoin because it's not something that they can take away. And like when we present the argument like that to, say, Cory Booker, right, Black senator from New Jersey, he gets it, right, and he kind of understands it, and that's what that book is meant to be. It's for policymakers. It's to give them an idea, like the people that you think support Bitcoin aren't the people that you think it is. You think it's just a bunch of anarcho-libertarian tech bros, and there's certainly a lot of us like that. But it's also a lot of other people that you would not expect, like military veterans who are against war and things like that. So that's that book. Now, the new book, let me tell you about the new book. The new book is Fiat Ruins Everything, and I am publishing that with Bitcoin Magazine. And, actually, right after this podcast, I'm going to have to go work on editing some of the chapters. But it argues sort of at various levels how fiat money has ruined everything that we hold dear. So sort of at the individual level, our relationships, our neighborhoods, our communities, our jobs, they've all been debased and ruined by fiat money. At the next level of sort of like groups, used to be families and communities. Now it's mostly companies. All of those things have been ruined by fiat money, even something like charity. At the next level, at the nation state government level, things have been ruined by fiat money for a lot of obvious reasons. And then even at the global level of international politics, fiat money has ruined a lot of stuff. So that's what the book is about. And I make the case for how it's ruined all kinds of things, including science and education and art and marriages and families and things like that. So hopefully it's a fun, good read. And I think I submitted like 90,000 words. It'll be out in the next few months, and I'll be doing some sort of a Kickstarter for it a few weeks before launch.
Wow. Well, we'd love to have you back on, Jimmy, when that gets out.
Hope so. I've been very excited about writing it, and like, man, this is going to piss off some people. I've already pissed off my editor because I wrote this chapter on art, and I think that guy is a fan of modern art. Yeah. So.
Well, if you're not making enemies, you're not making a difference. Isn't that the saying?
Exactly. Yeah.
The editor is great, by the way. Like, just gave me fantastic feedback. Just really hated that art chapter. That's what I could tell.
Oh, awesome. We'll definitely have you back on for that. And you've been traveling for what, 9 months, a year? How's that been?
Mm-hmm.
Are you happy to be back? Are you indifferent?
Well, kind of find it appropriate that the last stop that we stopped at was Auckland, New Zealand. And I'll tell you why, because that's probably not something that you expect to hear. So we traveled for 9 months, starting in September. Really, it was like we did like almost 3 weeks in London and Scotland, like in August, and we're home for like 12 days just to like take care of our stuff and sell our cars and things before we left on the trip. So it's basically been about 10 months. And we went all over the place, from Europe, South America, Middle East, Southeast Asia, and obviously Fiji and New Zealand. And we ended the trip in Auckland before flying to LA and then coming back home to Austin. And so Auckland was for us sort of like the last place that we were at. And I say it's appropriate because we got to visit the Hobbiton movie set. And you guys are familiar with what that is, but just for your audience, it's the movie set for Lord of the Rings, and it's sort of the Shire, right? Like the place that Frodo starts his adventure and where he ends his adventure. And it was kind of a cool thing. And as to get the kids excited, we watched all 3 movies of Lord of the Rings. And what I was struck by was, they're on Mount Doom, right, in Mordor, and it's getting really hard, and Frodo can't go on, and Sam's like, we're gonna go back. There is gonna be a return trip. You gotta think about like the mushrooms that grow and the flowers and all the good things about home. And they finally find the strength to make it, and they drop the ring into Mount Doom, and everything's great. And then they win the war, and the 4 hobbits are back in Hobbiton at the Green Dragon Inn, and sort of like looking at each other and saying, like, it's good to be home, right? Like they're finally home. They're finally there, and it's something that they've been looking forward to all of that trip, and they're sort of change people, and in a way they appreciate home more as a result of having been on that adventure. And that's sort of the mentality I wanted to have coming back home, because it is very easy to sort of live in the past a little bit and only think about what you were doing. But if you have the right mentality, it should be that you appreciate the present that much more because of the adventure that you've been on. And for me, it was like a great reminder to end the trip that, like, you go on this journey and do all of this stuff, but in the end, it's for something, and it's to grow as a person. The characters in that movie grew tremendously, and it's one of the things you sort of appreciate about how even a disgusting character as Gollum like grows a little bit and changes a little bit, even though his greed sort of consumes him at the end. The adventure, the journey is much more on the inside than you would think, and that's one of the sort of lessons I've gotten out of it. And obviously I appreciate like having gone to all of these places and meeting Bitcoiners on every continent pretty much, and things like that. But yeah, it was an adventure. I hope more people do it. And, I called it my Bitcoin sabbatical, and, more than one person has told me, hey, like, I totally want to do what you did. Like, it's my dream. I'm like, well, with Bitcoin, you can, like, start saving. And once you get to a certain number, go do it. Like, that's how people used to like fulfill their dreams, right? Like, start saving, work hard, go, when the number hits the number that you plan for, then go do it, right? Like, if it's making a movie or, taking a trip or, starting a business or whatever, like, this is how life is supposed to work. And under Bitcoin, you can. It's unfortunate that we're still stuck in kind of a fiat mentality where no one thinks that they can save because they're always trying to outrun inflation. I mean, Bitcoin kind of makes that possible. It just requires a little discipline from you.
Yeah, and that's something that we don't have anymore. And when you're talking, I just think of the old Saturday Night Live skit with Steve Martin, where they talk about credit card and using a credit card, and that's
Yeah.
we haven't learned. But that's quite a beautiful journey that you had. Yeah, it's amazing, Jimmy. Yeah, it's a one stipulation I have with my kids: as soon as you finish high school, you're taking at least 6 months off, travel the world on your own.
Very, very Kiwi of you. The thing is, the thing that inspired this trip, honestly, was the European backpacking trip that I did when I was 25, and I had just gotten laid off of my first job, right? Like I had this job out of college, and I had it for 3-4 years or something like that, and I got laid off. I had some money. I didn't have a girlfriend, so I was like, you know what? Now's a good time to go do something like this. So I went to Europe, backpacked for 3 months, and it like opened my eyes to what like a non-US perspective is and things like that. So, but I mentioned that because almost everybody I met on that journey, right, like staying at hostels and stuff, they were either Aussies or Kiwis. And then 3 years later, I had ended a contract and I decided I want to go to Australia this time. And I backpacked Australia for 3 weeks as a 28-year-old. And all the people I met were Europeans. So I think there's like a massive exchange program of like, going one direction or the other. By the way, that Australian trip, right after that trip, I met my wife and we got married like a year later. So it all happened very fast. And honestly, this last year was the first opportunity I could go again.
Oh, that's fantastic. Awesome. I love hearing travel stories. Yeah, that's amazing. I think Kiwis are per capita the most traveled people in the world. I'm pretty sure about that.
I think maybe the Dutch and maybe even Canadians might have a quibble with you. They like there are way more Canadians traveling than Americans, at least back then. So yeah.
Faris, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Canadians are leaving Canada at the moment. That's probably why.
Out of all the countries, Jimmy, continents and countries, we hear about El Salvador all the time, but what country, continent has you super excited about Bitcoin?
Well, so there are lots of Bitcoiners almost everywhere. So like I went all through the Middle East, Jordan, Lebanon, Egypt, Turkey, Georgia. All of those places have like a Bitcoin community, and I met up with people in each one of those. I wouldn't say excited, but what I'm really curious to see how plays out is in these Middle Eastern countries that are in various stages of hyperinflation. So Lebanon is definitely hyperinflating, right? Like their lira on the day I arrived was 44,000 lira to $1. And on the day I left, it was 49,000 lira to $1. I was only there 1 week. Right now, it is 94,000 lira to $1, or at least that was 2 weeks ago. It might be even higher now. But that was January when I was there. In like 6 months, it's doubled. So it's inflating really, really fast. Turkey is not that far along, but it's getting there. Egypt is sort of starting to get there as well. And like the official rate and the black market rates are sort of diverging. And I'm really curious to see how it plays out, because the general pattern that I've seen is that almost all of those countries use the dollar as a backstop. So in Lebanon, first of all, the largest bill is 100,000 lira, which at the time I was there was worth like $2. So you have to like carry a stack this big to pay for anything, right? And I guess like printing a larger currency is kind of like doing a reverse stock split. It sends like sort of the wrong market signal. So like governments are very reluctant to do it. So people use dollars for large purchases because I mean the largest phenomenon is now $1. So what are you going to do? So there's a like Lebanon has kind of gone through dollarization. Curious to see if Egypt and Turkey will follow that same path, or whether like the dollar, like depending on the timing, if there's like sort of quantitative easing at the same time that they start hyperinflating, and usually when the US before the US feels the inflation, other countries feel it first, and then they feel it. Then I wonder if they'll dollarize or go to something else, whether it's Bitcoin or to the Chinese yuan or something else. That is very interesting for me. I think there is room for Bitcoin to sort of find at least a niche, if not something greater in all of those places. And this is where sort of like that next stage of fiat collapse is very interesting, because we're kind of seeing people adopt Bitcoin because they have to and not because they want to, and that dynamic is something that a lot of people almost always ask me questions: how what's going to happen? Is there going to be revolution or whatever? My answer is always like, I don't know. Like, how's that supposed? It depends on a lot of circumstances. But sort of watching it in other countries and seeing how they react, whether the dollar sort of keeps its role or doesn't, that to me is the interesting part, and sort of like the canary in a coal mine for what's going to happen in the United States.
Yeah, and it's like you said, people adopting Bitcoin because they have to. I mean, in countries that you just described, in Central American countries, it's Bitcoin is a means of survival, whereas in the United States and all this, it's a speculation. I'm just going to trade in and out.
Yeah, and that's a reality for most of the world. Half the places I visited, they've gone through multiple currencies in like the last 30 years or something like that. And that's completely normal, outside of US, Europe, and, maybe, New Zealand, Australia, Korea, Japan, something like that. Like outside of the first world, it's just sort of regular occurrence that the money debases and you redenominate or change to a different currency or something, and you lose all your savings. I've seen it referred to as sort of like the inverse Sabbath year, right? Like, or where instead of having your debt wiped, you get your savings wiped every 7 years. Like it's kind of a ridiculous but evil thing that's happening in a lot of countries. And we'll see where all that goes, because I suspect that a lot of human capital gets wasted because of the monetary madness. And where it could be a lot more productive under a sound money.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Jimmy. It's we're just past the hour. Appreciate your time so much, and it was great catching up with you in Auckland. And anyone listening, where would you like them to find you, follow you?
Well, I'm on Twitter at Jimmy Song. I think I have something signed that says, "Here's my Nostr pub key." Programmingbitcoin.com is my website. My newsletter is jimmysong.substack.com if you want to read about Bitcoin from a technical perspective. So there you go.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Thanks, Jimmy. We really appreciate your time, and you're sort of our insight into sort of what, because we talk to a lot of people doing different projects, but you've got your hands in all this, especially the Bitcoin stuff. You're our lifeline to sort of see what's happening in that space. So thanks again for your time, and we'd love to have you back on and plug your new book.
Oh, well, I would love to plug it then. There you go.
Thanks, Jimmy. Thanks for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for watching or listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like, subscribe, and share so we can spread this educational content to others like yourself. Visit bitcoinbasics.help.
Disclaimer. Any content provided by CoinCompass is for educational and informational purposes only and is not investment, legal, tax, or any other professional advice. A qualified professional should be consulted before making any financial decisions. CoinCompass will at times recommend certain products, services, and technologies, but these are opinions based upon our own or podcast guests' experience and not endorsements. We take no liability for out-of-date or inaccurate information, software bugs, manufacturing errors, technology misuse, or issues involving third parties. Visit coincompass.com for more information and please contact us.